You know the show, right?
Yeah, I listen to it all the time. I was listening to just this morning, Huckster Burgers.
Oh, how good is he?
I've never tried one, so...
Mate, I
obviously not been a
can
Melbourne boy.
tell that. I have. I've tried two each time. Are we good to go? Right, okay. So, Glenn, welcome to the Small Business Big Marketing Show.
Thanks, mate.
Very good. Now, buddy, I need to describe... It's an audio medium, right? So I need to describe you to listeners.
Tall, good looking.
Well, you know, you're not a bad looking bloke, hey? Rugged, you got tats, a few tats, you got a sleeve there.
Yeah.
Is that it?
Yeah, no, I've got a few. I've got on my back, I've got a Japanese symbol for endurance, which
Right.
is one of the pillars on the Kokoda track.
Yeah,
but written in Japanese to represent both sides of the war there. But everything is attached to me and things that have happened in my life. Yeah.
Okay. Hashtag on your t-shirt, not dead yet.
That's my life philosophy.
Is it okay?
Yeah, and it's become the philosophy for our business actually in the last 12 months, which has been huge for us, to work out how to break through. You know, a lot of marketing is about solving a pain for people. In an adventure business, how do you solve a pain for people is quite hard. I know what the pain is. We want to get people out of the corporate coffin, as we call it. We want to get, but it's not enough of a pain for people to spend $6,000 or whatever our products are. We're kind of a high-end product, so most people get used to the fact they've got to be stuck in the grind of the, you know, it's Monday, I hate Monday, it's Wednesday, we're nearly at the weekend. And
yeah, what an attitude, hey? What a way to live.
Yeah, it's a terrible way to live. But, you know, so the not dead yet was, well, we go on adventures and we challenge ourselves because we're not dead yet. In the theory being that you're dead a long time, as far as we know.
As far as we know. Yet to be proven, otherwise.
Yeah.
Hold that thought. I want to come back to not dead yet, because it sounds like it's a philosophy that not only kind of is a mindset held by your clients and prospects, but also a philosophy for your business. So let's talk about your business. Adventure Professionals is what you do. How long were you in the Army for before you started Adventure Professionals?
Well, I spent 17 years in the Army. I started as an infantry soldier, which is, you know, what most people would imagine a soldier to be, so the guy on the ground running around. Yeah. And then I was injured actually and ended up having to change corps, and I went to medical corps, which I didn't have a choice on. I wasn't impressed with at the time because, you know, I was tough. I wanted to do tough stuff, and being a medic wasn't tough. But I ended up specialising in aviation medicine. I got a nursing degree. I do helicopter evacuations, and that was my whole background pre getting into the adventure game. But I started in the adventure game not under my brand, working for someone else. Okay,
so 17 years in the Army, because quite a leap going from being a public servant to being a small business owner, right? Yeah. So how did that happen?
I had absolutely no idea about anything, to be honest.
You were just going to come back and live on a pension, weren't you?
I was never going to get out of the Army.
Right.
I love the Army. It's not a long-term career, but it's certainly something that I didn't foresee myself getting out of anytime soon.
Right.
And I kind of fell into going away on adventures because of my skill set. Some ex-Army guys contacted me. They were taking away these executives from Westpac. They had to put around a certain amount of security around that. And I had a medical skill set that was required for them on the trips. They said, "Do you want to come on this trip?" I asked the Army. They said, "Yeah, go for it. Take 2 weeks off." And I did that, and I thought, you know, this is pretty much what I'm doing in the Army, walking around with a backpack on, looking after people, less chance of being shot at, and people get paid to do this. So how good is this?
Yeah.
So and that started to become, these guys asked me 2 or 3 times a year then to come in and help with their high-end clients.
So how many years before you go, okay, I actually might leave the Army?
The very, very first trip I did, there was a guy in there, and I said to him, I could see myself doing this for a living. It's the first time outside of the Army I could see something else that interested me.
Were you kind of kidding yourself? Clearly not, because what you are doing is now a success for you. But at that point, you're just working for someone else, right? Yeah. Having fun, getting paid, happy days. Go back to the Army when that's all over. It's a bit of a different story when you go, I can do this. And you're responsible for cash flow in and out, you know, getting customers, a whole lot. Well,
that's a whole story in itself. I wasn't getting paid when I first started doing Kokodas.
Right, there's a problem.
So I did my first 5.
Poor negotiation skills, great trekking skills.
Well, I was getting paid by the Army.
Right,
and when you're in the military, the money's not a big deal. You don't get paid well, but you're well looked after. So I did a trip, and I thought, how good's this? An overseas holiday. Then I got offered another trip, and another trip. I did 5 before I started to say, I probably should get paid for this. But yeah, to answer your question, I started a gym also, so I teach boxing. I was a boxer.
Right.
Obviously, you don't get a head like this from ballet. So, and that was my thing. And I started teaching corporate boxing, so teaching these crazy, like doctors, lawyers, successful people, and then putting them in a ring to fight each other for charity fight nights, which I thought was crazy. Right. I'd been fighting all my life, but so I'd started that. My cash flow skills were terrible. The ATO and I in the early days had a few conversations. that didn't go to my side. And you learn.
It's Glenn Azar again. What'll I tell him?
Yeah, and I remember owing the ATO big money, what I thought was big money at the time. Now it's what I don't think is big money, but at the time
How much was
it? 70,000.
Right. Still big money?
Yeah, it was more than
Come on, mate. You're not that tough. 70 grand's still a lot of dough.
It's more than I was earning in the army.
Right.
Yeah, but now it wouldn't scare me as much because I know that the ability to earn when you own a business is dependent on how hard you're willing to work.
Right.
So I find that those two very well aligned.
So just be clear there. You say you're doing this work for someone else. You're not getting paid, although you start to get paid at a point in time after five tracks for someone else. You then start your own business while you're still in the army, which is boxing. Rich blokes fighting boxers.
Yeah, no, fighting each other. Yeah. Putting doctors and construction workers and tradies and lawyers.
Sort of like a fight club.
Yeah, like a fight club.
Was it?
Yeah, pretty much. But we would sell tickets to it. People would turn up. We'd make $10,000 on a night, which we were giving all to charity.
So it was a show?
Yeah, it was a show. It was ring card girls and ring announcers and the whole kit and caboodle, like a professional boxing show.
What was it called?
My gym was called Fighting Fit, so that was just a Fighting Fit fight night. And then I've got an autistic son, and so we were raising money for an autistic farm that was doing good work with animals and autistic kids. So we're giving the whole 10 grand away. My business skills were still really poor, so I would give the money away before I'd had all my bills settled, so sometimes I'd lose money. Yeah,
right. You're running this while you're in the army?
Yeah, I was in the army, and then when I got out of the army, so I got out of the army in 2009.
Right.
I started Venture Professionals in 2010.
Okay, but you're running the boxing thing.
From 2001 when I come back from East Timor, I started running that. Yeah.
How good's that?
It's the first time I'd interacted with civilians outside. I'd never trained civilians before. I was a physical training instructor.
Probably more dangerous than the blokes on the.
They're a different breed of animal. There's no doubt.
Business would be great with our clients and civilians. Like life would be easy. So. Did not know that about the boxing thing. That's fair. So that's your foray into small business. That's when you have gone, okay, this is not as hard as it may have appeared when I was just looking at it through the lens of a soldier.
No, it was hard. It was really hard.
What did you find hard?
Well, I found the army really simple.
Yeah, well, everything's done for you.
There's a system. People say that we've got a lot of self-discipline in the army, and that's actually not true. We've just got a lot of discipline. We don't need self-discipline because we're told what to do and the parameters with which to do it. And when you get out in the real world, there's none of those real parameters. And I had a lazy accountant for the first couple of years, which is when the ATO first contacted me and said, all this stuff's going on. I said, I don't know, talk to the accountant. And they said,
he was asleep.
It doesn't work like that. You're responsible for it. So, okay, well, now what do I do? And I hired business coaches. And back in those days, I'm talking 15 years ago, in the early 2000s, business coaching wasn't big. I was hiring people that I felt hadn't been in business, hadn't felt my pain, so I started to see.
It was a bit smelly back then, wasn't it?
Yeah, and it was a bouncing ball model. Just do this, and now do this, and now do this, and you should be okay.
Right.
So then I went out and started to meet with business owners who I'd become friends with through my business and asking them real advice, not in the same industry, but and I'd learnt so much more that way. I started to self-educate.
Yeah, right, okay. So you sold the gym?
I sold the gym in 2013.
Okay, so you started Venture Professionals whilst with having the gym. That kind of makes sense.
Yeah, it kind of mixed in. So I bought a percentage of another company first, which was Australia's top-end trekking company at the time. So that was called Executive Excellence. It's not around these days as such, but...
Did you kill it?
It died in the GFC.
Right.
It died in the GFC because we were doing a $5 million turnover, for an adventure business is huge.
Yep.
And we had 17 staff, 14 of them were managers and had business cards. We all managed no one, but everyone had a title. Yep. Everyone had a car. We were just really clunky. Didn't see the GFC coming because we were all ex-military, had no idea about money.
Yep.
And the GFC hit us, and it hit us hard.
Yeah, right.
And it just disappeared. We went to one staff overnight.
What percentage did you have of that business?
15%.
Okay. Did it hurt?
It hurt. I lost every dollar that I'd saved in my time in the army.
Really?
Every dollar. Yeah, and a marriage. I lost a marriage out of it as well.
Oh, mate.
Yeah, because financial stress in a personal relationship.
Let me just reconfigure my notes here, because I had you coming in to talk about the Adventure Professionals, but...
Well, that's when it started. So Adventure Professionals climbed out of the ashes.
I don't care right now. Tell me, you're on your ass.
Yeah.
Lost your marriage.
Yep.
Every dollar you had.
Flat broke.
What'd you do?
Well, I was living in Brisbane at the time. I had the gym in Toowoomba, which was still running. I had a manager running that at $70,000 a year. I now didn't have a job. My accountant said, you need to get rid of the manager because you need that wage. The manager's a bloke I've known 20 years. So I've known him since he was 10 or 11 years old when I trained him as a boxer. Couldn't do that. I built these boot camp models, and in the Army we hate the whole term that PTs use as boot camp because it's not true boot camp. So a lot of them watch American movies and they just yell and scream at people. That's kind of not how the Army actually works. So
you need like a cargo net and like a trench of mud.
You got to have all that
boot
stuff,
camp.
right? So I just had these models that I'd written up and hadn't used for years. I dragged them out and I said, I can't PT people one-on-one and get myself out of any financial trouble. So for the first time ever in Toowoomba, I ran a boot camp, and I had 30 people sign up at $500 each. I put 15 grand into my bank, and I lived off that for the next 8 weeks that I ran the boot camp. Because I had a decent name in Toowoomba, and people wanted to train with me. I couldn't make that sort of money per hour training individuals, and that's how it started.
But that sounds pretty easy. But there must have been a point where you're in the shitter. Okay, you're a soldier, you're a tough guy, you've got mindset kind of skills that allow you to work through major difficulties. But was it really that easy for you? You've gone, hang on, got no money, got no wife, life's not looking really good. Therefore, all I'm going to do, how do I make money? Oh, $500, 30 people run a boot camp. Was that it, or was there a moment when you were in the fetal position in the corner, sucking your thumb?
Yeah, look, I'm a pretty tough guy. I like to think I'm pretty tough, but it's there are plenty of times where, you're just laying awake at night. I don't sleep a lot anyway, but laying awake at night thinking, how did I end up in this position? Just
ring me, mate, at 2. I'm
That's why I was like, how did I get in this position? Because I've always worked hard. And I started to realise that just working hard obviously wasn't the answer, because I'm the guy that will do 18-hour days, 7 days a week, and it doesn't worry me. But I wasn't getting a result. I wasn't working smart, and I know you hear that all the time in coaching, but it was that simple. But the simple side was I'd had this concept 2 or 3 years ago and I hadn't used it. Why didn't I use it back then? Because I wasn't desperate.
What concept? The idea of
this whole boot camp thing.
Boot camp, okay.
And then from that I built another boot camp and another boot camp and another boot camp, and the business and I started Adventure Professionals in 2010, right in the middle of the GFC. Now it's a luxury spend, so it didn't do great for a few years.
Rookie. Back then, rookie.
But I'm very arrogant and I'm very confident, and I'm just going to go in, balls and all, and I'm going to go in hard on this.
Just tell me about the mind. I'm really interested in mindset. We're going to talk mindset a bit later anyway, but that mindset, if it was me, to be honest, and I feel as I can be honest with you, Glenn.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think I just would have gone, this is way too hard. I actually don't know what I would have done, but I would have been pretty down. How do you, when that clicks in, what do you do? Just go, first world problem, move on, China? Or what's it's self-talk?
I know it sounds like I kind of sound tough and confident when I do that talk, but the whole imposter syndrome and the doubting yourself, that is a constant battle in business. I don't care who you are. And you just constantly go through it, and is it good enough, and you rewatch things, and social media and all that wasn't as big back then. I think in this day and age it's easier to be successful than ever if you're willing to do the work. All the clues are out there. 10 years ago they weren't.
Yep.
But
what do you mean? What's the social media relevance? I thought you were going to say social media feeds imposter syndrome because everyone else seems to be having an amazing time.
Yeah, I kind of get that side of it, but you get to interact with who you choose to interact with.
Right.
People that blame social media are kind of kidding themselves because it's not going anywhere. So you need to
seems to be anchored.
Yeah, you've got to adopt to it, and there's constantly new feeds and new things happening and updates on Facebook, and there's always something happening. But for me, it was a way to connect directly with my clients without spending any money.
Okay.
Because when I started my gym, I had a local newspaper convince me to buy a business card size ad to go into their Saturday paper for $800. Now back then you were charging $40 per hour for PT, so that was a lot of clients.
That's a lot of clients.
And people
they're good, those sales reps.
Yeah, they don't look in newspapers for a PT. You might look for a house or a car, but you've got to actually be thinking about a PT and flipping through the newspaper at the same time. We got 0 leads.
Yep.
The next time the guy come in and said to me, we've got 100,000 readers of this newspaper, so if you only get 1% of those...
Average age is 87.
Well, if you get 1% of those, you're going to make all this money. And another mate of mine who's an ex-SAS bloke, who's very switched on, said to me, do a deal with him. Tell him that rather than pay the $800, if he's telling you you're going to get 1,000 leads, tell him you'll pay $2 for every lead that comes in.
Success fee.
Off the newspaper. And they weren't as keen on that deal.
Right.
Because that didn't make sense.
Yeah, okay. Mate, that's an amazing story. That is an amazing. What I will leave that, but I am fascinated of people who come back from the dead, so to speak. What did you owe at that point in time when you had to sell out, or did you just lose?
I didn't really owe anything.
Okay,
we
you just had nothing.
We had no house. We'd lost $150,000. Which is a lot of money, and it was a lot of money to me.
So 150 is a lot. 70 is just a bit of change.
But the 70 was years later. As I started to earn money, at least when you're on a wage, you're just on the wage.
Yes.
And so $70,000 or $150,000 or whatever, when you're on earning 60 grand a year, for example, that's you're capped.
Mm-hmm.
But what I learnt with the gym thing is if I go out and do more work and get more people in, and I started more boot camps and more programs, I became very good at branding my own trainers. I learnt that I don't have to do all the work. So I had 9 trainers working for me at one stage, all on full-time wages, which in the PT industry doesn't happen. Sick days paid out, all that sort of stuff, and they were really well looked after. In the end, I was doing 5 hours a week in my gym, and I was earning myself 6 figures after costs and everything else, which is a PT is in Toowoomba we're talking. We're not talking in a capital city. That was phenomenal.
Yeah.
Couldn't have earned that anywhere else. I could have went to medicine for 10 years and not earned that.
So that's going along beautifully. You've come back, Lazarus. There goes Lazarus down the main street of Toowoomba.
There's 1 or 2 of those stories, just quietly.
No doubt. And you think, well, there's something more. I'm going to start a business for corporates, which is where Adventure Professionals kicks in. Is that?
Yeah. Well, I'd been doing it under the Executive Excellence brand. I had a lot of clients that said they wanted to go on trips and that still wanted to be involved with me, so I started Adventure Professionals. All those people that thought they wanted to go on trips with clients might have already been on the one trip that I knew back then,
right?
Which was Kokoda. Yeah. So they would refer friends, but it wasn't. I think I did maybe 1 or 2 trips, but I wasn't doing great out of it. But there was some ego around it. I was able to put photos up of me going to Kokoda again.
Yep.
Whereas now I'll do personally 7 Kokodas in a year.
Wow. Back
then I was flat out selling 1 or 2. And I tried all the crappy marketing tactics of hurry, places filling fast. You need to get on this thing because it won't be. And crickets. The first Kokoda trip I ran had 4 people on it.
How many should it have had?
Well, you don't really make any money until you have 10.
Right.
But I did that on purpose because the 4 that went, 2 were ex-army that I knew, and I needed photos that didn't have my old brand of the old company. So I went over and just took photos and used them for the next 18 months.
There you go. Marketing expense.
Yeah, so I viewed it as a marketing expense. And I do like being in New Guinea. So
right, okay. So you get the Kokoda thing starts to go well, and all of a sudden you go, okay, there's a decent business here of taking corporate people away to challenge themselves. Corporate, what did you call them? Coffin.
Getting them out of the corporate coffin.
Get them out of the corporate. I was going to say coffin dwellers, but shocking. So then all of a sudden you just start to add all these different journeys. In fact, I've got them in front of me here. Global treks, snow treks, extreme treks. You've got war history treks.
Yeah, look, our main thing is we do the Aussie 10 Peaks, which is something that that we pioneer, which is the 10 highest peaks, Kosciuszko National Park. So that's very popular with us, and the Kokoda is very popular. But I go dog sledding up in the Yukon, which is phenomenal. I look at things I would like to do. You've
just created a business where people pay. In fact, you've created a lifestyle where people pay you to go and do stuff that you want to do, and you just have to take a few strangers along. That's what you're doing. I've got you now.
That's 100% what it is. And I get that not everyone can do what I do, but there's a lot of luck in business. People always say to me, you're really lucky to have what you have. Yeah, I am. But geez, there was some pain. There was some pain in the... We're 7 years this week. 7 years AP's been running. And there were a lot of times where you just thought, what am I doing?
During those 7 years at AP,
there was still some times.
Tell me about the biggest pain.
I organised a trip to go to the Black Cat track, which is up in the north of New Guinea.
Oh, you've done that.
There was an attack.
Haven't done it.
Yeah, not many people have.
No.
There was an attack happened up there where some locals were killed and some Australians were attacked with machetes. And people view that as happening in New Guinea a lot, but it doesn't. But this is right up in the highlands, very tribal. So our trip got cancelled. No one's been back there since except me. I went back. I took 2 friends, I took some local police, and I went and met with all of the village elders along the way.
Right.
I look back now, that was probably silly, but because of years in the military, I feel pretty comfortable in those volatile situations, and I've been on deployments, active deployments, and so I've been in worse situations. We went and met with them all. They wanted to do things over on these... the locals wanted us over there. They're getting 100 people a year doing the Black Cat. It's a phenomenal trip, whereas Kokoda at its heyday was getting 9,000. So they wanted a piece of that.
Circus, wouldn't it?
It can be at times. It's not now, but it was up until about 2007, 2008.
So where's this big pain point you're talking about where Black Cat got cancelled? Okay, so you lost some dough.
So I go over and I do this trip, and then all these guys want to go back to Black Cat. We're the only company that's willing to do it. So we book all these trips to Black Cat. There's a lot of excitement around it, including some of the trekkers who had been attacked. So we get in there, and then a week out, the guys who had done the murders were captured, had escaped back into the community. The trip got cancelled. The insurance company says, well, that's kind of a political thing, that possibly we don't really cover that sort of stuff. It's considered outside the realms of what they would cover. So now I've got, 10 people paying $7,000 each that want their money back. And then I've got another trip after that.
Mate, that's 70 grand.
Times that by 3, because then there's another trip a month later.
Right.
And then there's another trip a month later.
Right.
And they're all going, well, hang on. But unfortunately...
Can't they just kind of divert it back onto Kokoda?
They've all done it.
They've all done
it. Yeah, and so I look at other things, and there are reasons for going to Black Cat. But anyway, long story short is, it just took a lot of negotiation with the insurance company, and they paid out.
Yep.
So, which cost me a little bit more in insurance going forward.
Yeah. You'd be an insurance nightmare.
Well, generally we're pretty good. I've done 58 trips across the Kokoda track. I've had 7 evacuations in that time.
Yep.
6 of those have been from veterans, as in, because I run a PTSD program, post-traumatic stress disorder, and injuries. And so with the injuries that I've taken, they're higher risk. So out of all of my 58 trips that have been non-veterans, I've had 1 evacuation.
Okay.
So we're pretty good.
What's the business look like, Adventure Professionals? How many staff? You can't be doing all these trips every year, or are you?
At the moment I am. And I have been for the last couple of years. So
no wonder you look so bloody fit.
I'll do 10 or 12 trips.
Do you need an apprentice?
Well, I've got one.
No, you need another one.
So my daughter does all my... She's 20 now, but she does all my trips.
Right, let's talk about Alyssa, because it's not all you, mate. You're one of the rock stars of the Azar family. But,
yeah, I'm number 2.
Yeah, number 2 now.
Yeah, absolutely. I was relegated last year on the 21st of May.
What happened then?
Well, Alyssa became the youngest Australian to summit Mount Everest. Right. She was 19 years of age. It was her 3rd attempt. So, and that's really pushed her in a whole other direction. But we get a lot of people signing up. And she's got a book, so we always talk about it. And in your podcast, you hear about having material out there. I've recently been to KPI, and it's talked about having books. Well, she was fortunate. She had a book written and produced by Penguin, so she was paid to do it, which is very... And most of us have got to go and do that ourselves.
Well, there's good and bad to that too. I mean...
there's less money in it.
Less money, good distribution, you get a bit of publicity.
It's a great business card.
Unbelievable.
Because we get, seriously, a minimum of 3 inquiries a week, and it's when you hear from us, Alyssa's book.
Wow.
So that's... For us,
so let's just hang on. I hate talking about daughters because mine's just giving me the absolutes at the moment. But so Alyssa's, she's the youngest person to scale Everest.
Youngest Australian.
A youngest Australian at the age of 19, did you
19,
say?
Yeah.
3rd attempt. First 2 failed because...
First one, there was an avalanche that killed 17 people. Yeah. And so the mountain was closed. The second one, there was an earthquake that killed 9,000 people around the country. She was at Everest Base Camp. 21 people were killed in base camp at that time. She was buried, half buried in her tent, and managed to get herself out. So a lot of carnage. So she's got an interesting story from that point of view. She's incredibly tough, a lot tougher than I would view myself as. But we did all of her mindset training and stuff was done with SAS soldiers, commandos. She's always mixed with the best of the best to get herself ready for putting her life on the line on Mount Everest. So I'm not obviously an overprotective father. I'm a nature over nurture sort of guy. But you want your kids to live a full life. Sadly, for a lot of people, what we're trying to do is get to death as safely as we can. So for most people, I don't want to take any risks. I don't want to do anything outside of the realms because I'm hoping to live as old as possible, as safely as possible. We're trying to get to death safely. That's wasn't her thing.
That's how you've raised her?
Well, she's been around. I've got 4 kids. She's the only one that's into it, so it's certainly not. But she was the youngest.
The other one's a librarian, accountant.
Yeah, one worked, like my oldest daughter, Brooklyn, works in a pub. She's a real people person. Yep. Alyssa's not really a people person. Right. She's very quiet. They're very different.
Well, adventurers are by nature quite...
very introverted.
Introverted and selfish, would it be fair to say?
It's probably fair to say that of mountaineers.
Mountaineers,
in particular. But Alyssa's just a really, really private girl. Always has been. She's public speaks really well. She gets on stage talks to thousands of people. She
didn't just decide to go up Everest. What was... She was a lead up to that. She's always done stuff, has she? She's always taken risks.
Youngest person ever to walk the Kokoda track when she was 8 years old.
8.
Someone's beaten that since, and that's what records do, I guess. But
how many hours of that was on your shoulders?
None of it. Not a scrap of it. And people ask that a lot because she was an 8-year-old that looked like she was 6. She was a little girl.
Kokoda sounds pretty easy, Glenn.
Yeah. Well, you know, for her, she did it in 9 days. You and I would do it in 9 days, 8 days.
Mate, I grew up with a mother, dear old mum, still alive, 90 plus, not kicking on. But I grew up given the mindset that if I mow the lawn, I'll run over my toe. If I go surfing, I'll get eaten by a shark, and if I ride my bike, I'll get hit by a car. Right? So hearing you speak like this, A, is quite emotional, and B, is quite inspiring because, and I don't blame mum for that. I think I used to. Didn't realise this was going to be a counselling session for me, but I just think this is because running a small business, let's bring it back to business, is that it's about mindset, right?
Absolutely.
You know, not dead yet on your T-shirt. Hashtag not dead yet.
Yeah, and I coach
getting
people.
to death safely.
I coach a lot of individuals and small business people around fulfilling themselves, because you go into small business for a reason. And the thing that holds most people back in small business, and myself included in the early days, is fear, is I'm not good enough, is I don't want to put myself out there. And yet for people my age, so I'm nearly 45, there's kids out there in their early 20s who are murdering us online because they're fast adapters, they're willing to put themselves out there, and then people our age are going, how dare they put themselves out there like that? Well, you know what, that's what you should be doing. You should have the guts to put yourself out there and say, hey, I'm really good at what I do.
Mate.
And that's what Alyssa and I do. What we always say to people is that we say what we'll do, and then we do what we say. So she said she'd climb Mount Everest, she climbed Mount Everest. That was always the case. It wouldn't have mattered if it was 10 attempts. I just knew that that girl was going to keep doing that until she's stubborn, she's strong. She's now starting to coach people. Now, this is an interesting story. She always hated coaching because she said, when I hear you coach people, you're telling people what they already know. But people don't do what they know firstly, and not everyone knows it because we've been given that glass ceiling by your parents, by school teachers, by society saying, don't do that, you might hurt yourself, don't do that. And I never did that with her. I never really gave her those. What I would do is be really honest and say, if you want to do that, this is what it's going to take. If you're willing to do the work, you can have anything you want, but you've got to be willing to do the work. There were no shortcuts. You know, she's from the age of 7, I gave her a 12-month training program, and I won't lie here, it was to turn her off going to Kokoda. And I set her up to fail. I said, you've got 3 days a week. If you miss one of those days, then you're not committed enough to go to Kokoda. For a whole year, when I'm not here, someone else will take you, and I organise that. She never missed a session as a 7-year-old. But what that's done is taught her how to prepare for everything ever since. She's climbed on 5 different continents on her own. From the age of 15, I haven't climbed with her anywhere.
How proud are you?
We are adventure when people look for us. I'm super proud of her.
How do you manage that with your other 3 kids? Because I've got a mate who's got a bit of a star of a son, and like big star of a son, does some amazing things. But I look at the other siblings and go, how do you manage that?
She's so normal around the other kids. They don't treat her any differently.
Do you?
The younger ones.
Do you treat her differently?
No, I don't think so. Her and I are very close. We live together. We've always lived together. Whereas the other kids live with their mum, and we see them on weekends, and we're a close family despite the separation, all of us. But
you're a bit of a Phil Dunphy?
Yeah, I don't know about that.
Tell me about putting yourself out there. Let's go back, because you talked about that in 2 contexts really. One was around the idea of just how you live your life, just put yourself out there. But you did use the marketing term in there, and I'm all for that, mate. I think, you know, you've listened to my show. Anyone who's seen me speak, it's like you're standing on a mountain of knowledge. Share it. How do you share it? Do a podcast, get on stage, get a YouTube channel, get a TV show. I don't care. Write a book, but put yourself out there, because you're doing yourself a disservice and you're doing your customers a disservice by not sharing your knowledge, right? You and I are 100% on that.
Absolutely.
And you've got a podcast?
Yeah.
You've got a YouTube channel? You do Facebook Live all the time?
I'm not big enough on YouTube yet. I'm a bit lazy on YouTube, but I love the podcast.
Yeah.
And I love, and I Facebook Live weekly at this stage.
Yep.
I used to be a bit ad hoc, but now I do it weekly, and I get a really good engagement. In fact, if I don't do it on Sunday night at 6 p.m, people will message me and say, hey, you going live
Fantastic.
today? So now people start.
That's emotional engagement. That's a brand.
Yeah, it's
right
been
there.
really good.
Okay, so what do you say? Because I've done it till I'm blue in the face. I'm almost embarrassed to raise it anymore, but it is part of my marketing thinking, my marketing mindset. What do you say to people who are still looking for an ad in the local paper, or still umming and ahhing about should they do something?
Yeah, look, it's an interesting question, because there are certainly people in our age group who are still stuck in that old style of marketing and the TV and the newspaper, and they're not. My bottom line is, if you're not getting the result you want, you need to do something different. In this day and age, we're collecting information, we're watching the Gary Vaynerchuk videos, and we're collecting, and if you're not taking any action, then you're actually not getting a result that you can adjust. So my biggest thing with most people is to make them take an action. I've got a couple of young kids I'm working with now even who have started PT studios, for example. And I said to them, I want you to do Facebook Lives. And they said, I hate Facebook Live. One girl was doing a marketing campaign. She needed 20 people on this program to break even. She released it 2 weeks before Christmas, which is a terrible time to release something like that. And it was just a photo, a gym photo with lots of words, zero engagement, had 10 people signed up. I said, well, you need to do a Facebook Live. She's a perfectionist, which means we're a procrastinator. That's what perfectionism is. And so then she said, all right, and I'll do it. I want you to do it tonight. And she said, I'll do it. She did it, and it was terrible. It was umming and ahhing, but I was trying to get her to engage with 4 people signed up off the back of it, though. She messaged me and said it was terrible, I hate it, I want to delete it. I said, no, you're not allowed to delete it. You leave it out there. She did it every week. She filled that program within 3 weeks. And everyone said to her, I feel like you're talking to me. And that's the difference. When you do a live, people feel like you're talking to them. You make mistakes and you keep going. We can't edit it. We can't get it, make it look perfect. These are kids who are doing 30 selfies before they put one online because it's got to be right. So for her, she hated it. And now she's getting, they're still clunky in her opinion, and they are, but they're getting better and better and better. And she's getting people signing up all the time because now people know who you are. So my biggest thing to people is you've got to take an action. And when they coach with me, I make them take an action that they're really uncomfortable with as early as possible and make them stick with it. And it's working for them. You've just got to take action.
It's a bit like Eat That Frog. You read that book?
Yeah, I haven't read the book, but I understand the concept. Yeah, and I think that, well, my idea is, and it's kind of probably more of a Tony Robbins thing. I'm not a great specific Tony Robbins fan or anything, but it's, if you take an action, you get a result. If it's not the result you want, though, you can adjust the action and then that adjusts the result. You keep doing that till you get on target. It's how we bring a weapon on target. It's how it works. So, but if you just sit there collecting information and tell me why it's not going to work, well, what you're currently doing is not working either. So unless you're happy with where you're at financially, with your business, with, you know, then you need to take an action. Action
creates reaction, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Action is, it's contagious. It gets people excited when you start doing and talking about. I do a Facebook Live, and I'm very big on how much value can I give other people for absolutely nothing in return. And then I make sure I try and...
But maybe you'll give away all your IP.
That's right. That's how people think. But what I'll do is at the last 10% of what my time frame is, then I'll talk about a product. So while I've got you, I've got this thing coming out. And then people are interested because they don't feel like they're being sold to all the time. They feel like you're genuinely trying to give them information. So I write notes. I plan my lives. So I have notes. But then I interact with the people as they come up. And that's a skill set in itself because there's questions coming up at 1,000,000 miles an hour. And, yeah, so there's all of that stuff. I did a live feed inside a private coaching group with Alyssa, which she was kind of not sure about. It was the biggest I'd ever had. We'd had massive engagement. She had 70 questions from, these are all just clients of mine.
Just to understand that, because that's an interesting marketing tactic in itself. You did a live feed in front of a private coaching group. So this is a private Facebook Live.
Yeah, so you can do a private Facebook group and you can do a live feed.
You can either go public or you can go invite
just
people
inside the group. And so then they all had this access to her that no one else had. And they were able to ask her all these questions around her mindset and her, and invariably they sign up to an Aussie 10 or a Kokoda because I am firmly of the belief that the best personal development programs in the world are adventure, are getting outside your comfort zone, because once you can never unexperience something. Once you realise what you're capable of in one area, you're capable of more in every area.
Is it really true? You know, we've all seen that diagram with comfort zone and then the little bubble on the outside where the magic happens.
Yeah.
Is that true?
Well, I just don't think there's any magic in being safe all the time.
Right.
I think if we're in our comfort zone, it means we're never being challenged. And I've got no doubt that there's something outside that comfort zone that we think, I would love to have a go at that, but. And I don't know, at my age I still feel 25. But I'm sure when I'm 75 and I'm 80 and I've got the less physical capability, I'm sure I wished I'd gone and done that. You know, most of us care about what people think. And as you get older, if you talk to people in their 60s and 70s, they realise that no one cares about you.
No,
because everyone's caring about themselves.
Yeah.
So you get to a certain age where you go, actually, no one's really thinking of me that much. Why didn't I do that thing? What was the fear that was holding me back? Most of it's around being judged.
You love what you do.
Love it.
I was speaking to a bloke only this week who a bit down and out, and I said, ask, often in the questions that we ask determine the answers that we get. So the better the question, the better the answer. And me, I'm not a coach, but I said to him, what if you asked yourself, what's going to bring you the most joy in life? Putting budget aside, time aside, putting restraints aside, what would bring you the most joy? Is that a good question to ask someone who's in business maybe, and just kind of in business because it may be a family business and they got it off their dad, or they bought a business because it was cheap? And
yeah, I think that's a great question to ask yourself all the time, and it's that Simon Sinek, start with why. and if you're in a business that you don't want to be in, I have this belief that anyone who's in a business that isn't contributing to the business needs to get out of it, whether it's the receptionist, whether it's the person mopping floors, whether it's the delivery person, or whether it's the owner. If you've got a poor attitude, even if you're the owner, you owe it to everyone else in the team not to be in the team. That's kind of, the Army's really big on building strong teams because we deal in death, and everyone needs to know how to do your job just in case you're not around anymore and so on. In the civilian world, when I coach people, they try and teach someone enough to help them, but not enough to take over their job. Or we worry if we train our staff too much, they're going to leave and set up their own business. You know what, if they do, so be it. That's a part of the process.
Yep.
They've got every right to do that. But when you're really good at what you do, no one leaves. When I had my gym, it was just humming along. No one left. And yet everyone told me it was a wrong business model. But it was the right business model for me. I understood what I was doing.
Everyone's got an opinion.
I was about building people, first and foremost. If I built my people well, people don't leave for $1,000 or a $5,000 pay rise. They leave if they're not happy about something else. There's something else going on. But for an individual who's a business owner, absolutely. What do you want? What's going to make you happy? If everything paid the same, what would you be doing with yourself? And try and tap into that.
Who inspires you the most?
I'm inspired by a lot of people, probably people that you guys may never have heard of necessarily, but obviously my daughter inspires me a lot because she lives and breathes the ideals that I believe in. So we walk our talk. When I coach people and teach them models, it's not models I've learned through a coaching school. Whilst I have studied through a coaching school, it's models that we've applied to our life that have worked. So that inspires me because at any stage, at 17, 18 or 19, she could have given up on climbing Mount Everest, and she's still not giving up. She's now going to Russia in a couple of months' time, and she's doing all these things. So that inspires me. I've got a mate, Keith Fennell, who's the youngest Australian to make it into the SAS. Do you know Keith?
No.
Oh, Keith's a legend.
Is he?
Yeah, so Keith's got a couple of books called, they're a few years old now, Warrior Brothers and Warrior Training, which is about his time joining the SAS. He was 20 years old. He's been in the Army 9 months, and he joins the SAS.
What is it about him that inspires you?
It's the fact that everyone told him that you couldn't possibly do this because normally you've got to spend 6 years in the Army to have enough background, and he just said, I'm going to do it anyway. 130 people went for it, 11 got in, he was one of them. But more importantly than that, he's now left the military and he's a school teacher, and he's teaching at-risk Aboriginal and Islander youth, and he's getting phenomenal results.
What a legend.
Because he's this guy that treats everyone the same, and he's got a really interesting mindset. Yeah, so people like that inspire me.
Buddy, we're not dead yet.
No, we're not.
I could talk to you. I had no idea this is where the interview was going to go.
Neither did I.
Excuse me. Really?
Yeah.
Where do you think it was going to go?
I didn't really know.
Talk about your business.
I'm kind of a bit of
marketing are you doing?
I'm an ad-lib sort of guy, I'll talk about anything. I love to talk, but and I love people. I love building better humans, which is my two mottos: are building better humans and not dead yet. Are the two reasons I do everything that we do.
Building better humans, not dead yet. You know, you've got this wonderful. Sometimes video would have been better than doing audio. You have a wonderful. You've got this tough guy thing going on, but I can see it in your eyes that you're a softie.
Well, I'm very soft.
Yeah,
and that's worked against me. I've been touched up a few times in business.
Sounds awkward, but anyway, we'll let that. We'll move on.
Because in the military, we our word is everything. You take everyone on their word. You shake hands, and if I say I'm going to do this, and you say you're going to do that, we both go and do those things.
How can you let yourself be touched up in business?
Well, I've found that not everyone is as honourable. So if you don't have, I never had contracts for anything in the early days. I've got a really good lawyer, an amazing lawyer who's a good friend, and he kept saying, mate, have a contract. I'd go to him once a problem came, and he said, mate, if you had had a contract with this in it, this would have happened. I said, I know, but I trust people.
And by the way, what person is going to try and touch you up? You know, sort of, you're going to come out swinging.
Well, I'm not as aggressive. When people know me, I am a lot softer than I seem. Yes, I boxed, and I'm in the military, and I do a lot of tough things, and that's more related to a past person, to be honest, growing up. You know, when you talk about business success, most people, just to flip a little bit, when we go back to that, why do we do things? Most people say, why am I good enough to have success? I've got a year 9 education, if I'm honest. So I moved out of home at 15 years old, and I passed the first half of year 9. I was living in Victoria at the time at Melton Technical College. So you didn't have to be a rocket scientist to pass this thing. I didn't even pass the whole thing. You needed a rocket to get
out there.
Now, but I ended up with a university degree. I ended up, which the Army put me through all that stuff. I've got no right to have any level of success whatsoever.
Well,
if you want to go and look on your past histories.
But based on qualifications, maybe you don't, but I'm not sure qualifications.
If you're willing to take action, and that's why anyone can do this.
Right.
I'm not special.
Mate.
Alyssa's not special. No, we're just people that do things.
Yeah. Maybe that's the difference, hey?
Take action.
Mate, I don't know how to finish this interview, so I'm just going to stand up and give you a hug.
Good on you, matey. Love your work.
Cheers,
Thank
mate.
you so much.
Thank you.
No one could see that, but that's all right. Hey? Oh, actually, we're on Facebook Live. Yeah, they could see that.
I'm not a huggy guy.
Oh, I don't believe that. Mate, you would hug at the end of every tour. Hey, you can wave goodbye if you like.
How's that?